And let me check if we are live. We are live. Oh my goodness. I am so excited for this interview. Now, I get to hear a lot of extraordinary women and their extraordinary stories, and it is such a pleasure, each and every one of them. But when I first heard Jo's story, I was like blown away in a way that has just continued to grow in curiosity and in respect. So, Jo, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your extraordinary story, but also the extraordinary decisions and moves that it took to be who you are today.
Well, I'm honored to. I'm absolutely honored to be here. Uh, it's been a full circle moment for all of us. We all go through this. We grow. Well, I shouldn't say all, but I think the majority of people will, evolve over time. But it is such a pleasure and an honor to be with you, and I really respect the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, well, let's dive into it. Jo, do you want to share with everyone where you actually are calling in from today, but where do you call home? And then just introduce yourself a little bit.
Absolutely. So I'm in Los Barriles, Baja, Mexico. So Baja California Sur. It is a beautiful place to be because it's lovely and warm here. Uh, and I spend 7 months of the year here because of the nonprofit work that I do. And the other part, the 5 months, I go back to my own family in Canada. So we call it reverse living. I live in a house here and I live in an RV in Canada, which, is just a flip as a snowbird would live down here. And yeah, so I'm Jo, and I have quite a diverse background, but my heart has led me here to do the work I do now. But without the experiences that I had, I would not be able to do the work I do. And so, oftentimes I just want to share that I think we sometimes get stuck in the story at the moment thinking, oh my gosh, but everything, and it sounds so cliche, but everything truly leads you to where you're supposed to be. And if you had told me that, oh man, even I'd say 15 years ago, I wouldn't have believed I would be sitting in my house in Mexico talking, I love Canada, but I don't love the winter. And I love
Mhm.
the work we do down here, the kids that we work with. So I am first and foremost a Canadian. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm all those things. But really, what I am is I'm a humanitarian. That's really who I am. I am so called to do service work. In fact, I notice that my circle, the more I think about the circle of people like you, Debbie, I am called to do service work. So I attract because we are but mirrors of other people. That's really all we are. We attract, like attracts like, and when we move, that same thing happens. So it's it's really an honor to be with other people that understand that giving is really who that's what we're meant to do. That's what we're meant to do. We're meant to share our knowledge and our wisdom. And I mean, I could go on forever, but I know we're going to talk about lots of cool things. So,
Yeah,
that's just
no,
a
but I
little bit about
really,
who I am.
yeah, no, but thank you so much because I really wanted people to understand your heart before we get into your story. Because when we can feel somebody's passion for their purpose, as what you just said, it actually invites even more people into this to see themselves in your story, even though the particulars, your story is so unique. We might say, oh, that happened to her, that can't happen to me. But listen for the things that are telling you that
Mhm,
there is similarities here. So let's go back to the
mhm.
beginning. And I don't know where you feel the
Okay.
beginning is, but let's go back into a time where maybe you didn't feel so extraordinary or that you had choices.
Mhm. Sure. Well, as you know a little bit about my story, the real thing is for me, and I wanted to say this because I really want people to get this. it really doesn't matter. I'm going to share my story because I think it's important to say that this person can overcome this, therefore I can too, right? If I just brass tacks. But I will say this, we all have stories and they all impact us. So my story is from a long time ago. In terms of when I was a child, things were really difficult, really difficult. I ended up in short-term foster care, and I mean, it was short. But sadly, the person was using the system to bring in and enroll victims into their life. And when I did ask what had happened to me, no one believed me because I came from the lack of better way of saying this, the wrong side of the tracks. And so sadly, other girls got exposed, and this is why I don't lead with this, because it can cause some people to go, oh, but that's not me. But you know what? Everything that happens to us is us. So in my case, sadly, this man murdered a little girl I knew. And I became the only witness for the RCMP and spent 35 years in hiding. And it was difficult. Like, I'm not going to tell you it was easy. It wasn't easy. And I know you're not looking for that. I know you're looking for honesty and what moved me. What moved me, honestly, without a doubt, what kept me alive, optimism, service. Always, I would look and go, okay, well, yes, this is horrible. I don't like this, and I can't be visible, and I can't really be friends with people. I can't do any of those things that normal people do because I put myself at risk, as he kept trying to find me, and his words, finish the job. But I found ways, and I truly was hopeful. I was hopeful that there was something more for me. There was something, and other people showed up in my life. And this is something I really want to stress. I just don't remember who talked about, there's a philosophy called me and we, or we and me. And our society cycles through it about every 20 years. And you'll see commercials that if we're in the me society, it's very much about what can I get? What can I get? And the we society is what can I give and how can I be of service? I've been stuck in we since I was little. I've been a we from the time I was probably 4 or 5 years old, as I remember doing something that was just out of character for a little kid. I've now found that out. I didn't know that back then. But my point to this is I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. And so optimism carried me forward. And then I just, I did what most people do. I worked in whatever job I found, even though I was moving all the time. I've moved 61 times in my life. And that was, a lot of it was to stay alive, to keep my kids safe from this person. And it was bad, that part, like there were some terrible parts. But, again, I knew that I couldn't stay stuck in it, whatever it was. And I say this to you because whatever you are encountering or going through, or whatever terrible maybe thing that you're dealing with right now, it's not your whole life. It is in mine, it was a huge chapter. I mean, 35 years is a long time. I'm 63. The reality is it wasn't my whole life, right? And so we decide, really, we choose. I kept choosing to move forward. So in spite of, or despite the things that were showing up, that some people could say, well, yeah, but I just couldn't go on. But you can. The human spirit is resilient. Part of it is surrounding yourself with good, like good humans doing great things. I say this, and Debbie, you know that. I say that all the time, because when we get together and lift each other, we do great things. It's not about me doing it. It's about us, or we doing it.
And I think that is why it resonates so much. You always speak about it. It was your story, but you help us. I think the term you use is stand on your story. And you believe in helping people share their stories, share their passions, share their voices as part of the healing and resilience.
Exactly, because when I think about any story, so whether it's just a health journey, because we've all been there, it isn't our whole life. It doesn't have to take over our whole life either. And sometimes I joke, as people age, they can do this, and I'd rather be ailing and tell my stories of things that are going on instead of telling their stories of all the wonderful things that are going on. And the reason I share that is because that's the same when somebody goes through a divorce and they get stuck in the divorce story, or they get stuck in the, I'll just say bankruptcy. That's a very hard thing to go through,
Mm-hmm.
but we can move forward. When I say this, the most critical part is we, not me. It's, you have to find the sources, you know, the resources, but standing on your story allows you to serve other people. Since I wrote
Mm-hmm.
my stories, every single one of them, I get feedback off, like every, I would say my first book, which is 11 years old, I am still getting emails. Like last week, I got an email from someone saying, Jo, I finally feel like I'm worthy. And I mean, how sad is that? Like that book's been out for 11 years. So at the very least, I didn't ask this person how old they were. At the very least, they've still had 11 more years of feeling they weren't worthy. I'm going to tell you, you're worthy. It's just finding whatever that is that lights your passion.
Wow. Okay, so let's dive into, you are an author, you are a speaker, and you are a humanitarian that's doing amazing work. Let's start with the books you've written first, and what is the message when you get on stages?
Absolutely. And thank you. I started my very first book is about while I was in hiding, and it, I'm not swearing, but sometimes I have to be very careful how I enunciate it. It's Frock, F-R-O-C-K, off, living undisguised. Um, it is the story of what happened, and it was a tough story, but I can tell you it turns out really well because I'm alive and I'm free, and I've been able to help so many people. And I am, that really led me to stage speaking a lot more. I'd already been speaking, but that really changed everything because I would stand on that stage as vulnerable as you can be, because when you read my story, you know everything about what had happened to me, well, within reason. I mean, there's, it's only so many pages, but you knew the hardest parts of my life, and you knew what I had to go through to stand back up. So the interesting thing of that, I tell everyone, by the way, to write, because whether you publish or not, it's irrelevant, but writing is very healing. And when you read my story, especially Frock Off, Living Undisguised, you knew so much about me. You knew, basically, you knew all my secrets, all my hidden, it was hard, right? So when you would come, pretend the pages, but I knew the stories because they're my stories. But that story helped unleash and unlock and untangle so many people, including myself, me first, honestly. And then what happened is that story led to me helping women in shelters, going across, you know, in Western Canada, going to various shelters and going, there but for grace go I. Because if you read the story, it talks about how I was even conceived. And none of that was ideal. But what we can do with our story is we can elevate our own story, ourselves, our lives, and someone else. And so it was easy. When I say easy, it was easy to talk about it because I'd already written about it. And so all of the, I'll say the terror or the fear of judgment was already out there. I mean, really, you read it anyway, so it didn't matter to me. But what mattered, who took out of that story, I can do this too. If she can do it, I can do it. It's no problem. So that was my first. I've written several, and that, I would say that is obviously the book I'm most proud of. It's also books that set me free. But I've written books on dog rescue, Bella's Dash, how our dog rescued us. My little pup laid in my lap while I was writing Frock Off. And every time I got anxious, dogs are so brilliant. Every time I got anxious, she'd be squirmy and I'd think, oh, she has to go outside. No, she was taking care of me because that was her way. And then, you know, other books, While I Can, which is about how I ended up here, how I sold everything in Canada and decided I'm going to run this nonprofit. Oh, by the way, I don't speak Spanish. So this is quite the thing. And I've figured out, I'm still learning. I'm always learning, but I can read it. I just can't speak it properly. But that being said, that's the dedication when your heart says you're going to do this regardless. And that's what happened. So there's a couple other books in there too, but I would say Frock Off Bella's Dash, while I can. My Baja snapshot, if that shows up, that's just a proof. Sorry. It is a book about kind of you come to Mexico. Anyway, I've written several, but those are the ones I'm most proud of. So,
Wow. Okay. You've taken us down a journey. Let's talk about the work you're doing in Mexico and why you're there 7 months of the year. I know you're very passionate about this and you've done extraordinary things as you've
yeah,
done this journey. So let's talk about that.
thank you, because that is honestly, that is where my heart is. That is where that is being able to time. I could talk about it for hours because the kids are so important to me. So a short synopsis of this is I came to Mexico in 2017. I met the children of New Creation. And I fell in love with those kids. I know what it's like to be abandoned, neglected, otherwise forgotten. And these kids' stories are even deeper, much deeper than mine. In the sense of some of them will spend from, there's a 6-week old there right now. That little girl might grow up there. She will never know the home. She'll never know just a single mom or a dad. Like, she'll never know that feeling of having a parent that just absolutely dotes on her. She won't know that. Maybe she'll be one of the lucky ones and their parents come back. And what I mean by that is, in this particular home, these kids can't be adopted. So that means they have no hope of leaving unless their parents are healthy and well enough, or out of prison,
Wow.
or you name it, want their kids back. And sadly, the ones that do sometimes return will then return their children in a month because they realize they don't know them, they don't know how to parent them. And so these children are re-traumatized in that situation. So being in a foster home is not a blessing. It would be much better if it was an orphanage, because then they'd at least stand the chance of being adopted. But anyway, I can go on, and that's a hard one, but it is why we got involved. I want to show you this. The name is not on the outer cover. So when I go in to see the kids, the standard thing is the children will all run because they know me. They all run up to the car. They all hug me. It's collective. Okay. This is the whole we thing. That's awesome. There is no me though. And all children need time to be seen in particular. They themselves need to be seen. And so last spring, we decided as part of our programs to get them to write their stories in Spanish. We would then translate them to English, and they would then share them at the front of the room if they wanted to. So not all of them can read yet, but quite a few could. And I was amazed that every single one of the children, every single one that could read, wanted to be on that microphone because they want to be seen. And that's why we called it the See Me Project. So the See Me Project said, hey, Christina, for example, and this is her book. And her book is really, it is really, it's a tough story to read at times. But I will tell you, she has transitioned into the most beautiful young woman I have ever known, ever. And I've known a lot of people. She came through absolutely, brought her back. Her mom came and lived at near the foster home for a year. Then she abandoned her. Then she wanted her to go with her to this other place. Christina knew it was not going to work for her. So Christina had to walk away from her own mom. So now you see this repeating, right? Every time. Trauma, trauma, trauma. Finally, she went to see her grandmother. Was in no way, shape, or form able to take care of her. And her dad died while she was there in her grandmother's arms of an overdose. And this, I know this is heavy. What I want you to hear, though, is the work of New Creations kids. So here's this girl who came at 5, who witnesses.
Oh my goodness. To be continued. She will be right back. This is as she comes back, we'll let her get connected up, and then we'll go further with this discussion here. So thank you for bearing with us all. Jo, I knew that was going to happen. It was getting more delayed and more delayed.
I'm so sorry. That is the challenge with being in Mexico. Okay, because
Yeah.
bandwidth is a
But you know
toughie.
what, Jo, you talked about the challenges and they're not going to stop you. You don't speak Spanish, and yet you have a nonprofit in Mexico and you are fundraising all the time. So I love that your heart to give and to serve is truly
Mhm.
made you an unstoppable woman. Now, let's be honest, you were unstoppable long before that, but it's led you through this excitement. And I think that that is contagious for all of us because we see you do the uncommon and the unstoppable, and we want to be a part of that. So finish your story about Christine
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
help us understand how we can help you with this.
Thank you so much. So Christina now is 23. We just got her into hairdressing school. We were able to get that sponsored. That's her only dream. So she works full time now. Sorry, she works with the kids. She lives on site because at 18 they age out, they have to go. But she decided she wanted to be, her exact words in her story, they saved my life. And I don't want any children to feel that they're going to be abandoned again. So Christina, like myself, is the same kind of commitment. It's like, yes, that happened to you, but it's not happening again. We see you. So when she had a chance to tell her story, I get goosebumps. Her artwork is very emotional because every one of them wrote a picture, or sorry, drew a picture to go with their story. And okay, don't cry. Anyway, back. Um, it's because it's so meaningful. It's Christina now going to hairdressing school. She just cut all the kids' hair 2 weeks ago at the home. And she's cut, I went, this is her hair. I mean, if it's not done right, it's not on Christina. It's me. I have a crazy head, curly hair. She did my hair. I sat in her chair. She was crying. I was crying because holy cow, full circle moment for this young woman who is just so giving. Everyone who meets her just falls in love with her because she's that kind of person. She totally gives everything from her heart. And it doesn't matter. This is the thing. I just want to go back. The Spanish English thing, it's irrelevant. And I'll tell you, I am learning and we spent a lot of time laughing. You know what matters? Here. This is what matters. It's not about, we put barriers up for ourselves. Oh, but only if I could. No, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant, right? If we are ready to move forward, it will happen. So we are doing a huge fundraiser right now because we have some challenges. I already alluded to this. When you're 18, you really have to go because there's no room for you there unless you start working there, which is what Christina's done. And she's been doing it for 5 years, and she's actually part of their succession plan, which is great because Roberto and Alma have been doing it for 24 years, and they're older, they're tired, right? And they've got some health issues. So Christina is learning to take on this leadership role. And so her having this new skill set, I mean, it doesn't sound like, but here in Mexico, having a skill set, especially one that's entrepreneurial, that's how you get ahead. And so she's leading by example by doing this, going to school and learning this and et cetera, et cetera. And so we're doing a large fundraiser right now to a couple things. Christina lives in a very dilapidated, and it's awful, shack. And we are fixing it. So we have a Indiegogo campaign we're doing, but on an ongoing basis, like that campaign will end. On an ongoing basis, we do monthly memberships, one-time giving, and it really helps because even though it's not as cost effective, Mexico isn't as cost effective as it used to be. However, it is a lot cheaper here, more cost effective, and your dollar goes a long way. And our organization has no admin fees. 100% of that money goes to the organization. And I just want to address how that's even possible. The organization we use, which is Zeffy, Zeffy, Zeffy takes no money. If you, though, as a donor, say, you know what, I want to make sure this company keeps doing this, I'm going to give them a small percentage, like 1, 2, 3, 4%, whatever. you donate and they keep their doors open. And so many organizations throughout North America have switched over because this admin cost is absurd. I worked for Heart and Stroke and it used to be 30% of every dollar. That I get why it was. Like, that's insane, right? 30%. When you start talking $1 million and it's 30%, I had to raise $1 million a year. So when you think about that, that's a lot of money. I worked in Regina. I was fundraising manager, and that was my stretch goal, if you want. I come from a background of sales and marketing and speaking, obviously, but well, I hope it's obvious. But in any event, you know, it's too much. Now I get why the big ones have to do this, but the grassroots organizations like me that work from a second bedroom in their home, and really when I go out, we do Sunday fun days with the kids where we bring hot dogs, or we're always teaching something like, oh, how many hot dogs are going on, and they're counting in English. So it seems like it's not much, but trust me, it's working. These kids are changing, right? They're thriving. So yes, on an ongoing basis, we have monthly donors. We have, like I said, one time the Indiegogo campaign. I'll share that with you if you like, so people can get involved. It's open for another 18 days, but the ongoing program is through Zephy. And honestly, we have done amazing work because other people have stepped up and said, we believe and we want to lift these kids too. We've built buildings. Oh my gosh, if you told me I would have had to go shopping for piglets. It's kind of off digressing, but it's the way my life is. I have to go because we had to fill the animal program. So they had food. So they have livestock. So we have to build a proper outbuilding. And I know you understand what I'm talking about here. Right now, if we had a hurricane, we could lose our pigs, our goats, our rabbits, our chickens. This is my life, by the way. You know, and oh, that's not happening. We have a fabulous garden that we put in. They run everything. They just need our help getting sustainable capital projects in place. So that's the kind of things we raise money for, to make sure that everything we do elevates, educates, and empowers for sustainable change. We don't touch anything that doesn't do those things, because
Wow.
it's not about, we don't need to be a hero. We need to teach to fish, though. We absolutely do. Like, I'm not just bringing food. That's useless. That's just on me. That's ego. When
Yeah,
they're throwing,
no, I hear
right?
you. And I also hear in your own story how the ripple effect and the choices created who you are. And now you're giving these people, these children, these young adults, an avenue to change their legacy, to change their lives, not just the environment that they were born into. They have a possibility here. And to me, that is what true giving is about, is to be able to change not only through awareness, but for skills, right? Like, I imagine you at the time, and I imagine these children praying for somebody to come along, and they didn't know, right? They might have been praying for the food, because at that moment when you're in survival, that you think that's the answer. But there is a bigger story and a bigger message and a bigger purpose. And that's what we're truly stepping into here.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, think about this. You know, if I bring them food for today, as you know, it's an old adage, we know this. But what's happening now is they're taking so much pride in what they're doing. Like when they show me the garden, I got the goosebumps again. When they show me the garden, it's just crazy. So we're doing a canning program this year because we can't even keep up with all the tomatoes and the tomatillos and you name it, we can't keep up with it. So we're doing a canning and a baking program. We're going to have little aprons, like, you know, the brownies and scouts kind of program where they get a badge. They're going to win an apron once they achieve these 5 elements. So everything we do has a purpose. And I will say this to you, I receive a million more than they, like a million times more than they do, because I get to stand back and I get to look at these kids and go, I get to be part of their lives. And it is an absolute honor to serve these children and the adults that are there, because they're all working their butts off. You know, it was for a long time, it was feast or famine. And now they have their own stuff. They're proud of what they do. They're cooking, like we bought them a big commercial stove last season that has ovens, and they're not used to ovens. So that's why this year we're doing baking and canning, right? And but it's I can't even. I could talk for hours about these kids because I am so impressed. They're so resilient, even through all the generational trauma they've endured. And you actually touched on it so well when you said the cycle is going to stop. Christina is a prime example. The cycle's already stopped. There's 7 kids that were her siblings. She never grew up with them, obviously. All of them are drug addicts, except Christina. You know why? Because some place said, I believe in you. I see you. I'm going to help you. That's what happened to me. We had no food, no running water. I lived in Canada. That should never have happened. And yeah, there were days. You're right, Debbie. There were days I prayed we'd have food. You want my one of my weirdest memories is, Mom, I'm hungry. Go to the fridge. There's ketchup in there, and boil some water, and you'll have some tomato soup. Like, we at least had ketchup, right? That's not happening with us. We're going to make sure the kids understand it, right? They're going to have skill sets so that when they do leave, they will not repeat the cycle, hopefully. That's our goal.
Wow. Well, you're doing it. You're doing it. So there's a few people in the chat that they're wanting a little bit more information, and you can go back into there and like type in and share links and stuff. But right
Sure.
now, in your wildest dreams, in your most extraordinary move and action, what's a dream come true a year from now?
A year from now, we would have that transition house so that the kids that are aging out will be in our independence program. They'll be learning, how to take your 1,000 pesos and do this. You can pay this. That these kids will have independent, they will learn this, they will get a job, they will contribute back a small fee to be staying on site. So they're learning rentals. I did this with my own kids. I charged them $300. I never kept the money. I charged them that money so that when they moved out, they would have something. I remember giving my daughter $2,500 because then she was ready. She wanted to go. And she's like, what's this, Mom? I said, it's money you saved. Well, I did for you, but it's the money. And so that's my big dream, is that those kids keep coming up, keep lifting others, because the truth is there's always going to be a sad story. There's always going to be a child that's been abandoned or for whatever reason left. We can make this better. These are the future, whether they're in Canada or whether they're in Mexico. Children are the future. And I mean, if they live, just say they live 80 years, 80 years of living one way, or 80 years of living a healthy, productive, as happy as you can be life. Okay, I'm not everyone's Pollyanna, which I am, but the truth. But they can change the face of what happens next, and that to me is my legacy. That's why I wrote While I Can and my Baja Snapshot, because that is my legacy, to say, okay, I came through all this. That's Brock off. Came through all this. Now I'm giving back, and I'm not standing in my own darn way either. I'm saying, I can't speak Spanish. Well, I'll learn as I go, right? So, yeah. And I
Wow.
really appreciate you letting me share. I mean, Giving Tuesday is coming up, which happens every year, whether it's evergreen or not. But giving on a monthly basis is really, we need to get to a point where we have enough money that we don't run out of money before the month runs out, right? So that's my dream, is that we can have stuff and there's no, we got to rob Peter to pay Paul. And that's a reality when you run a nonprofit.
Yeah, it
So,
is. It is. And one of the things that's in this campaign that you're doing, this fundraising campaign, which is called Giving Tuesday, and really, if you're looking for a place to give, you can't even find a more heartfelt place. You know your dollars are being spent in the right way, and it is perfect. But one of the things that I seen in there, and I think that there's many people that are perhaps looking for this, so I want to call attention to it, is you have built a home, which you actually rent out rooms in this home. And you're actually, one of the things that you can purchase, so you get back as much as you're giving, is room in this rental place. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think there might be somebody in here that would say, I want that.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So part of if you look at different campaigns, they're always offering you something. And our current campaign is offering you night stays at our home, which is Casa de Cielo. And we have built 2 suites within within the home that are on the main floor. And I'm very proud of them. And money goes back to our not-for-profit, because my feeling is somebody gets to come and enjoy. I mean, it is, of course, I'm biased. It's beautiful. And the rooftop deck is like, oh my gosh, it'll knock your socks off. But being part of Mexico, because a lot of times people come to Mexico and they go to the resort, and that's great, but you're not really seeing Mexico. Los Barriles is a smaller fishing village with lots going on all the time. There's a lot of activity. And so you get to be in the heart of something that is truly Mexican, right? And the suite itself is beautiful. There's an outdoor kitchen. And so one of our perks, as they call it, is for people to donate X amount of dollars, and then they get stay at our Airbnb. And we built the Airbnb for this reason, so we could help raise money for Team Humanity Baja and New Creations Kids. So it's full circle, full circle.
Full circle moment. And one of the and we'll close this off right away. I could talk to you forever. Is one of the unique things that I feel is a full circle is that my husband and I went to your little town, and we fell in love. And that was like 10 years ago or more. I didn't know you. I didn't know that this existed. We love the feel of this. We're looking for type of place to go back to and do. I live in Mexico 3 months of the year on the other side, and I volunteer over there and help fundraise. And here I meet you in a collaborative book with other women from all over the world, and I find out this story, and I'm like, thank you for leading me down a road, and for me just to continue to be curious and to continue to serve and to continue having doors open. And I'm so excited. I can't wait to come and see you there in person.
It is, it's funny. I agree with you. I came for what I thought was one winter. Like that's, in 2017. And I thought, I'll just come and hang out. Actually, it was 2015 I first came here and fell in love, and then it took us a while, like everybody. There's something magical about Los Barriles and La Paz, where I go with the kids. There's something absolutely magical. I don't have any, like, I say nothing bad about Mexico. I love Mexico. I wouldn't be here, but there's something magical, and there's something that draws people like yourself, myself, and all the other good humans together, and that want to make a difference. I say to people, if you come to Mexico, you ought to be giving back. You're getting something beautiful. So that's why we did it. And so, yeah, absolutely. I can't wait till you come and we go hang out with the kids. And I will say this, once you go, can't unring that bell. But it's so fun. So, and thank you very much for all this. This is just wonderful. I just put it in the chat, all my information.
Yeah, we'll go in there. But one last thing, just one way to close this. There is women out there that may not feel that they're extraordinary, or they haven't felt the courage to make that extraordinary move. What is your message for them?
Please see me. I know what it's like to not feel worthy. I know what it's like to feel shame. I didn't say this, but I want to say this because I want to put it in perspective. I was conceived while my mother was in prostitution. I say that because there was a lot of shame, and I was innocent, but I wore a lot of that shame. And it wasn't my fault. I didn't even exist. And yet I carried that with me for so many years. And the reason I'm saying that is I think that would be pretty normal for people to feel kind of, I don't feel great about myself. That being said, what if I hadn't put aside the things that I thought were bad? What if I hadn't stepped up and said, so what? That was a chapter, and in this case, not even written by me. What if I wasn't working with these children? What if I didn't know? I'm going to start crying, but what if I didn't know, Christina? You have that same power, and your what if whatever's tugging on your heart, whatever you believe that you should do, or that you dream of, or it keeps coming up, or whatever, that's your purpose, hun. That is your purpose. That's your calling. And we were all put here to do something better. And I'm not being preachy. I'm simply saying by not doing it, you're not serving your own purpose, which by the way, lifts you and everyone else. So please don't let anything hold you back. Don't let some misguided belief, because I'm going to tell you, when you are in your purpose, you are the most beautiful, extraordinary person on the planet. And people just flock to you because they want to be part of it, because they want whatever you have. What did she take? What did she do that changed her life? You have that power. So please join me, join Debbie, join every woman who stood up no matter what and said, this is what I'm going to do. I am worthy. I have something to bring, and I'm going to show up, because you will change the world.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. We will see you over in the private Facebook group where we can share each other's stories, and we'll make sure that you have a spot to put all of your information. Thank you, Jo.
Thank you, and thanks to all who have watched and joined in on this.